when we make a frequency table, the frequency table actually helps us then be able to make a histogram really easily. So the frequency table is like our setup work for being able to create the histogram for it. Probably the most challenging and maybe the most confusing part of when you're making a frequency table, which then will turn into a histogram, is how big to make intervals. What size intervals to have, how many intervals should you divide this data into, okay? So when we talk about dividing up the data sets, that's the first thing that we're going to talk about is how should we represent this data set? How many intervals should there be, and what would the size of them be? Because when we talk about having intervals, they need to be an equal length. So if I am going to compare something, I'm going to be making these bars on the graph. I do not want one bar to represent from 0 to 10, the next one to represent from 11 to 15, because there are a whole bunch of them in that area, so you thought I got to shorten that one up. And then the next one you jump and you go from 16 to 25. We have to have equal distance. They have to represent the same distance. So if we go from 0 to 10, the next one would go from 11 to 20. The next one would go from 21 to 30. They have to have the equal amounts of data, or of distance in them, not necessarily data. Okay, so let's just look at this one that is actually already been done, and let's just see how it got accomplished before we go and practice one at the bottom. The ages of people visiting a water park during a certain time period are given below. Use the data to make a frequency table with intervals, then make a histogram. So here's our data set right here. And we need to, first of all, decide what size interval should we have. So step one, find the difference between the greatest and the least values. So it's kind of like, you know what, if the smallest number is 50, let's just say, I'm not looking at this set right now, our smallest number is 50 and our largest number is 120, do we even need to worry about those numbers below 50? Do we need an interval to represent from 0 to 10 maybe, and from 11 to 20, and from 21 to 30, and from 31 to 40, and from 41 to 50? No, because there's not going to be anything in them. So we don't want to mess around with stuff that we don't really need. So we're going to find the least and the greatest. So in this data set, 5 is the smallest, and 34 is the greatest. So we find out how much distance is there between those two. So the distance between those two is 29. Now, this is how the book actually does it, and I didn't revise that part. So that you can count both numbers at both ends, really the best thing to do is just add 1 to it. So you can count the other number at the other end. And I would have said here that we need 30, okay? But they didn't do it that way, and when we practice one, we'll do it. But notice here, here's what we're doing. If we want the interval to be 10, if we want the interval to be a distance of 10, let's take our total distance we need, 29, and divide it by 10. That would give us 2 9/10, or about 3. So basically we're saying then that would mean 3 intervals is all we would have. So that's not really a good representation. That's too few. So then you decide, okay, well then let's just let's go with 3, because 3 is pretty close. It goes into 30. So and 29 is really close to 30. So we'll take 29 divided by 3. That's approximately 9.7. So we would have our interval would be 3 units of distance is all. But then we would have 10 intervals. Well, that's a lot. So then, what's another number that goes into our number that's close to 30? 5 goes into it. Let's try that one. So 5 would be about 6. That seems like a good interval. So that's what got decided, that it would be, each interval would be 5 units long. So represent 5 years of age. So Cody, tell me how there comes out 5 years of age in each of these intervals.
Because from 5 to 9, and then 14, different ages in there.
Prove it.
Because 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So 5, even though when you take 9 and you subtract 5, you get 4, don't you? But remember what I said, how we, to make sure that we count both the numbers at both ends, we have to add 1. So 5 and 9 is really actually 5 ages, like Cody said, it's age 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So all of those ages would go into that interval. And then the next interval is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All the ages would go into that interval. So where did they get the 3 for the age group from 5 to 9, 5 through 9? Where did they get the 3? Where do you think that came from? Frequency, what does that mean? What does frequency mean? Because it's in the frequency column.
Between the two age groups, how many children were between 5 and 9?
Yeah, it's how many? How often did it happen? So we have in our group up here, we need all of the ages between that are 5 through 9. 5, 7, and 9. That's where they got the 3. The next age interval is 10 through 14. How many do they say there are in that age group? There's 4 in that one. So now we look for anything in the age group 10 through 14. So here we have a 12. No, 15 isn't in there. 13's in there. 12. 12 again. 12 again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Okay, I want you to count up for me how many data values are, how many ages different kids are actually represented in there. People, I guess. They said they're kids and somewhat adults, I guess if you call 17 and 18-year-olds adults. How many people are represented in that data set?
15.
So all we have to do is count how many data values there are, right? Oh, there's a 22-year-old even in there. 2, 4, 6, 8, oh, a 25 and a 34. Oh my goodness, there are some adults in here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So what should happen after we've made our frequency table?
Your frequency should add up to 15.
These better add up to 15. Do they? Will you check it out?
Yes.
Do they add up to 15? 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2. Are all 15 people represented? Okay. Now, notice something else. Now so that's our frequency table. Now when we come over here to make our histogram, how many people were in that age group are represented on the vertical. That's how high our bar will be. And the intervals are represented on the x-axis. Notice something about the intervals. What's true about them? They're side by side, so they're backed up to each other. Okay, what else?
They're all close in range.
What do you mean they're all close in range?
Their ages are close. Some are the same height.
Okay. The intervals themselves, yes, the bars are the same height, the frequencies are the same. Tell me something about the intervals themselves on this histogram. What did I say they have to be? Equal distance, yeah, they have to be the same distance. They have to represent the same, the same amount every time. Every one of these is representing 5 years of age. Now, did any get left out in here? Is it continuous? 9, 10, 14, 15, 19, 20, 24, 25, 29, 30. Okay, so all of them got represented. You cannot leave out an interval just because somebody's not in. Once you decide what the smallest interval, where you're going to start the first interval up, and where you're going to end the last interval at, all of them have to be accounted for. But if there's nobody that falls in that interval, we would have a blank space in there. Okay? Okay, let's go practice this on our own. Ooh, we got a big data set here. Estimated miles per gallon for selected cars are shown in the table. Use the data to make a frequency table with intervals, then make a histogram. Okay, what's our first step again? Look up above. What's our first step? Okay, we need the smallest and the greatest. Okay, go ahead, look through that table and find them. What's the lowest number of gallons somebody gets? miles per gallon, I mean, and what's the largest?
15 miles, 3 intervals. And 44 highest.
Do we agree with Cody? Anybody find anything lower than 15? Anything higher than 44? No? Okay, so what do? We do a, so we're gonna say, let's just write that here, that we have the highest. We're gonna start with that, which is 44. We have our lowest, which is 15. We're going to figure out how much distance there is between those two. 29. Okay, what did I say we're gonna do, even though the book doesn't do it this way? We're gonna add one to it because we want to account for the numbers at both ends. You know how when I assign homework and you guys look at the board and you see that you have to do 15 through 22, you say, oh, we only have 7 problems. And I say to you, oh, you have 8. Because you have to 22 take away 15 is 7, and you have to add one to the one other end. And so you actually have 8 problems to do. Same thing here. We have 29, and we're going to add 1 to it, and we're going to get 30. So we really need a distance of 30. And now we got to decide what would be a good amount of intervals to have. So, what do you think? This is just really a lot like the one above.
I'd say 7.
7? Okay, does 7 go into 30 nicely?
Yes.
Are we going to be able to have equal intervals? No. Can't do 7. How about 5? Is 5 going to 30 evenly?
Yes.
So 30 divided by 5 is
6.
6. So that tells us 6 what?
6 miles.
No.
There's 2 numbers that have
A number of intervals. We're going to have 6 intervals. How long will each interval be? How many miles per gallon will be represented in the interval?
6.
Okay, let's 30 divided by
5.
5. Shouldn't there be 5 then? So what's our smallest number?
15.
15. Okay, let's just use our fingers. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So from 15 to 19. What's our next interval going to start at? 20. What's it going to end at? 24. So notice the difference between them is only 4, but remember how we have that plus 1 for the other end. So we really do have 5 represented in it. So go ahead and finish filling out the intervals. Now, you may not always be able to get it to come out exactly like it starts with the lowest number and it ends with the largest number, but you have to make sure that they are equal intervals. So if we would have needed to go to 45, we would have gone to 45 even though there wasn't a 45 value. Okay, we have to have equal intervals. That's what's important. Okay, now we have to figure out how many of them fall in each interval. So the 15 through 19. Here's typically how I do it. I typically will just take my pencil and start crossing out and counting, and I use different ways. I mean, if you're going the same direction every time. So for this interval, I'm going to go from left to right, bottom. I'm going to rise from left to right. I'm going to cross out. your eyes deceive you. I get 5, how many do you get?
Get 5.
Yeah, okay. So we'll put a 5 as our frequency for that interval. Now we will do 20 through 24. Again, use a different way to mark it so you can keep track. I got 8. How many did you get?
8.
And then, so go ahead and finish filling out your table. Come up with a new way to mark the next ones you're going to include. Now, before I move on to making my, no, you don't even be trying that yet, please. I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to allow it. So just stop. Go ahead and erase it. Before you even move on to making your frequency table, what should you make, or your histogram, what should you make sure holds true in your frequency table? No, in the frequency table, just the frequency table. They add up to what? How many should they add up to? What did we decide? Has anybody counted? Did we ever figure out how many there were? How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. How many pieces are there? 35. We hadn't done that yet, had we? Okay, so does this add up to 35? Well, the bottom 3 numbers are 10, and the next 2 numbers are 20. So now I'm up to 30, 35. Does everybody agree with my frequencies?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you make your frequency table, here's what you're going to do. You have to decide, first of all, you're going to measure. So can you see with these? Can you see some measurements on them, whether you use the metric side or you use typically the metric side, works best. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that whatever width you make them, first of all, you're going to be able to make, how many of them do we need? How many intervals? 6. Okay. So probably be a good thing to just take your ruler on your paper and measure, first of all, how far is it? How much room do you have to work with? Go ahead, Calvin, measure that. Go ahead, Noah, measure that. Measure how much room we have to work with on the x-axis. How much room do we actually have to work with? With your ruler. Oh, you don't have one. So that's something.
Did I get a ruler numbers on?
You could, well, you could try. Might have a few numbers on it. This one might have a few numbers on it. I'm going to suggest using the metric side. It's actually a little bit nicer, it's a little friendlier. Use the metric, the millimeters. About how many millimeters? There's 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. About how many millimeters do we have 6, somewhere in there. Okay, we need 6 intervals. We don't necessarily want to cover the whole thing though, so we'll take, so how about if we made them 8 millimeters wide, what's 8 times 6? 48. Let's make them 8 centimeters wide, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're not gonna start right here, right, butted up to the y-axis. So I want you to make a mark with your ruler where you're gonna start, okay? So make a little mark. Measure 8 centimeters from that mark and make another mark. That's gonna be your first interval. From that mark, measure another 8 centimeters and make your next mark. We now have 2 intervals. Anybody unclear what you should be doing? We need equal distance intervals. We keep measuring off 8 centimeters at a time. Until you have 6 intervals. And before we draw our bars, we're going to label those intervals, okay? So between those marks, and you're probably going to have to, like almost turn it kind of slanted. If you try to do it horizontal, they'll kind of run into each other. So our first interval is 15 through 19. So label that underneath. Make sure that it's legible. We can read it. And then the next interval goes from 20 to 24. That one should be labeled. Mine's not doing a very good job. Hopefully you're doing much better than my finger is on this. After you have all those labeled, now you're ready to create your bars. So you're going to draw vertical lines going up to the frequency you need. So for the first one, we need a frequency of 5. So we will draw a vertical line going up to 5. And put a vertical line going across, or a horizontal line, meaning going across the top. And lightly shade that in. Make it pretty. After that one is done, you're ready to move on to the next interval and create its. So you'll get to use part of the one that's the vertical line that's already there from the previous interval, and if you need to, yours is going to look prettier than mine. And when you're all done, ask to see the master that's already completed here, because I'm not going to finish it up on the smart books. After you finish your histogram, and then you will see if it is done well with this. Here over. Did you do it? Okay, I'm gonna stop the notes while you guys are finishing up. When you are finished up, ask to see a completed copy so that you can see that you have a good histogram made.